The No Nonsense Roundtable, a weekly radio show and podcast where host Dom Geneva interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. And now, here's your host, Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome everybody to the show that I promised you last week that we would do. I have a veteran on Zoom, and you're going to be able to catch this with the video on Zoom after the show today. And his name is Steve McAlpin. And the reason that I promised you that I would have him this week is that I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago for just a short time, and I found out that there's so much depth and so much of a human story and such a wonderful insight into the military and his career and his overcoming so many things in his life to the betterment. He is in the process of writing a book, which I would be happy to help support because his story is that good, and how he met his wife, and both of them are vets. And with that, Steve, I think anybody who has written 300 or 350 pages of a book already, I really don't have to help. I don't have to help with the story. You know how to tell the story. So with that, it's Steve McAlpin. And Steve, welcome to the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thank you, Dom. I really appreciate this opportunity to get my story out there.
Well, the whole reason for the show is I meet people, and it's a fascinating journey for me because I meet people that you want to know more about, like Don Alhart and some people that have won Grammys and Emmys and whatever. And then there's people that have these incredible stories like you do that people don't know about, but they should know about them. So let's talk about your story. Now, again, somebody gave me your name. Well, mainly Nita. Nita gave me your name because you gave a talk at her organization, and let's go from there. So let's start out from the very beginning. How did you get involved in being a military guy from the get-go? I mean, what was your motivation?
A great question, and I think about this often. How did I, of all my family members, become a soldier? I sent you a picture of myself at 5 years old, and for my birthday, I think it was, I got a plastic helmet, machine gun, canteen, and all the accoutrements that go along with being a soldier. And I put it on him. I was leading my big brother on a patrol, and somebody snapped the picture. I'm like, wow, it just was me. It just always resonated with me watching TV shows like Rat Patrol and all the other ones of the 60s and 70s. It just inspired me, and I felt that it was a calling, similar to anyone that has a calling for, like a ecumenical calling or a religious calling or something. I felt that it was my destiny to be a soldier.
So basically, you sound like you're a man of faith. God gave you a gift, and the gift was to do this particular task. So how old were you when you joined, and what service did you joined in the Army, right? That was
Yes,
it.
sir.
And you rose to major, right?
Right, I did, sir.
Yeah. So let's go through that. Let's talk about your induction. Like how did now back in the day, because we're of similar age. I mean, people were getting drafted back when, although you might be a lot younger than I am. I don't know.
I'm 66.
Okay. Well, in the day, I remember my draft number was 287. I keep
Wow.
on using that with the lottery, and I haven't won yet, but it's like a lot of guys join because they wanted to make a choice themselves rather than be drafted. But that wasn't your case. You knew you wanted to be in the military to begin with.
Exactly, and that kind of was to my benefit and detriment.
Mm.
Throughout school, I went to Christ the King Grammar School and Bishop Kearney High School, Catholic schools, and I knew I was going to be a soldier. Why do I have to know math and science and geography and all that stuff? And so I was a middle of the road achiever all throughout high school, and I liked to,
Mm-hmm.
practical jokes, and I was a class clown in many ways. And then I got a call from a Marine recruiter, and I was very, very interested. Had a Marine Corps poster on my wall,
Mm-hmm.
and but then the Army called me, and I was like, yes, sir, yes, sir. And I ended up meeting with the gentleman, the recruiter, and I joined up. This was when I was 18. I joined the delayed entry program, excuse me, and ended up going in when I was 19. Into the I was a woodworker. Instead of homework, I would do wood carving. I'm a pretty good
Uh-huh.
wood carver and woodworker. So when I got in the army, I became a carpenter and excelled at that fairly well.
Well, the recruiters too. They get some great accolades for getting recruits and recruits with a certain attitude and ability. And I'm sure you I'm sure you were a good catch. Let's put it that way. So from there, yeah, now, I mean that's just the basic, a cornerstone of the whole deal. But let's explain why a fella writes a over 300-page book. It's not the everyday the everyday experience of a guy wearing a uniform. So let's explain this. Let's explain this journey.
Well, thanks. And that's something I've struggled with. I remember reading the likes of Ernie Pyle, who took,
Oh yeah.
soldier stories and brought them alive. And I know so many amazing, incredible warriors. Not only human beings, but especially warriors, because that's my field. Um, and I kept a journal. I didn't do it in Bosnia, which I was there in 1996 for a 6-month tour in the beginning of that conflict, or the ending of that conflict, actually. And I didn't keep a journal. I wrote letters, but I never kept a journal. So in Afghanistan, I committed to writing a journal. And I've written that had I not kept that journal, I would not have remembered, or believed half of the
Mm-hmm.
things we got involved in.
Mm-hmm.
My perspective at the time, the associations I made with not only my unit, the 401st Civil Affairs Battalion, but some of the greatest warriors in the freaking world. It's just uh, amazing. Um,
Getting a little bit into I don't want to get into any political weeds here, but it seems like it seems like that has become a new mantra with the military is the warrior ethos. I want to get back to the warrior ethos rather
mhm,
the social justice thing, whatever, because your job ultimately is to, in my mind, you can correct me if you think I'm off base with this, is to dominate an adversary in whatever way you can
mhm,
when diplomacy fails,
right.
and that is your job. Now,
Mhm,
we talked before about chain of command and who's making those decisions and why are they making decisions and how politics should or should not be involved in that because obviously the military is under the direction of the civilian government.
mhm. Well, I ended up locking horns with the chain of command on a few occasions, and it was later in my career. I had served, I just a little bit of a background to give you an idea of the extent of my experience. I joined as a carpenter, did 3 years active duty, and then I took a couple of years off and lived in Germany for a couple of years. But I took a couple of years off and then joined the reserves and I became a combat medic.
Oh
Uh,
my.
so that was part of my enlisted experience. And then I wanted a promotion to staff sergeant, which was E6 on the promotional
Okay.
rank structure. And so I switched over to the 98th Division and became a staff sergeant and training soldiers.
Hmm.
From there, I was 30 or 31 years old, and I thought, well, maybe there's something more for me. I always dreamed about going up the enlisted chain of command or chain of rank, but I thought I had a calling to become an officer. So I went down, talked to a gentleman that was a liaison for ROTC and things, and he was a captain. And as I said, I was a staff sergeant, and he looked at me, he says, "McAlpin, you'll never be an officer." And of course, you probably when people tell you no, that's a big positive. Well, why?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I can relate.
So the only option I had, because I had just maybe a few college credits from MCC, I the only option I had was to transfer into the Army National Guard, and apply for their commissioning program through the Empire State Military Academy, which you didn't need a degree, but you need to promise them one within 5 years of graduating.
Ah.
So I did that for a year. I was like 2 weeks in the front in the summer, then a whole year of weekends, 1 weekend a month, and then another 2 weeks at the end, and you receive your commission as a second lieutenant, which I did. And I
Mhm.
got commissioned in infantry, so I had an infantry background now too. And I went to the active infantry basic course down at Fort Benning, which was about 5 or 6 months. Um, and so that gave me another identifier. And then I got out of that, and this is kind of a stranger story. I've been a humanitarian my whole life, right?
Mhm.
I know you have many similar qualities to that, but reading about the Holocaust and genocide throughout my life, I just had I gravitated towards stopping that. And I swore as a
Mhm.
young man that, quote unquote, I told a young kid when I was little, if I ever were to meet somebody like Adolf Hitler, I would take him out, whatever the cost.
Mhm.
And so when Bosnia kicked up in 92, I was a college student, full-time college student. I lived in a double house, so it paid for my tuition and my living expenses. So I saved up about $10,000 on my own, just cash. And my plan was to fly to Italy, and with my background, fly to Italy, get across, Italy to the Adriatic Sea, bribe somebody to take me across the sea, and then bribe somebody else to take me into Sarajevo, where I
Oh
would
my.
where I would commit to, I was a promising teacher at the time. I was a medic, I was an infantryman, and I could do several things for their war effort against the Serbs that were surrounding Sarajevo. So I was all ready to go, and I met a woman who convinced me. She says, Steve, maybe you could use your military skills and join a reserve unit that might deploy over there. And by the grace of God, I picked the 401st Civil Affairs Battalion in
Mhm.
1995, and I deployed with them in 96. We were the first reserve unit to be called up to support Bosnia, which was, when I think of the blessings in my life,
Mm.
but it gave me a taste of, like I actually volunteered to go to Ukraine, and I was on my way to Ukraine when my dad got sick, in 2022, I think it was.
Oh my.
And I had all my helmets and flak vests and everything, and I got to London, did a little vacation with a girlfriend, and then my dad got sick, so I had to fly home. But I had tickets. I was gonna sneak across from Poland into Ukraine, to help the war effort in whatever way I could. But
Wow.
my dad got sick, and I got old. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I have any more wars left in me, but that was my last.
Well, one of the things that hit me, you just said you were a combat medic. I mean,
Mhm.
you must have seen things that that you're still having nightmares about, I would imagine. I mean, just as a human being, you have to see some things that are pretty rough, right?
I was a trained combat medic, and that was in the reserve program, which gave me a lot of training and worked with some great people. This was in the 817th Evacuation Hospital, also in Webster. Great training, but I never deployed as a combat medic.
Oh, okay.
The only deployments I've had was as a civil affairs officer.
Okay,
Uh,
let's talk about that because you're talking about being in Afghanistan, right? I mean,
mhm.
let's talk about the time in Afghanistan because I think Afghanistan is one of the great mysteries of our day when it comes to military operations. That in Iraq, um, ostensibly weapons of mass destruction, which was overstated. I mean, Iran and Iraq are going at it, and that's something we really don't care about because the two of them are basically affecting each other, not us. And then you have this thing with Afghanistan, where it's a war on terror, and you're supposed to change the
Mhm.
hearts and minds of people, and you know, dominating an adversary is quite different than winning hearts and minds. It's like Colin Powell says, you broke it, you own it,
Yeah.
sort of type of thing. And you're saying that you were alluding at our previous interview that there were policies and procedures, and there was decisions made about in the chain of command that were ultimately really not productive, right? I mean,
Mhm.
is that
Exactly. Yeah,
accurate? Okay.
it is. Yeah. I
Let's
guess
talk. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Afghanistan to begin with. When you got over there, and we can go right, we can get right to your opinions about when we exited Afghanistan. So let's start with that.
well, on 9/11, I've written about this extensively. There's a song by Alan Jackson called "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning?"
Hmm.
Were you teaching a class full of innocent children? Were you, did you, go to church for the first time at ages? And several things in that song resonated with me after I got home, of course. And actually, I don't remember when the song came out, but I think it was pre my deployment, which was in
Hmm.
January of 2002. Um, we were blessed in a way to be called to play on a first string team in Afghanistan. Like if
Hmm.
you're in the Super Bowl, this was for many of us our Super Bowl in life. Being on the first string team in this greatest war on terror, when America got attacked worse than ever before. And so we were pumped up, we were trained. I As I mentioned, our unit got called first into Bosnia, and we were about to get called first into Afghanistan, but politics got in the way. And another unit was called first. And I can get into the politics later, but it was, somebody every in the military, people want awards and accolades and recognition. And if
Hmm.
you get soldiers into combat, or if you go into combat yourself, your creds go up. And
Okay.
so it was a lot of politics. And the unit that they chose for the initial reserve mission in Afghanistan, the active duty reserve civil affairs goes in, and they're mostly, former Green Berets or people in special operations that take kind of a break in their high op tempo service, instead of breaking
Hmm.
things, and they go into civil affairs to kind of ease down, but it's still in special operations. So these guys go in first, and they're usually there for a few months, like they were in Bosnia, like they were in Afghanistan, and then they leave the pass the baton to the civil affairs reserve components, which makes up about, at the time, 95% of civil affairs is in reserve programs, because we bring specialties in from the outside world. So the unit that got tapped for that didn't have enough qualified members. They had lied on their UMR, unit manning roster, and saying that they had 100% qualifications, when in fact they only had about 60% qualification.
Ah, okay.
So they had to tap another unit, and that was the 401st. And we supplied about 42 people to that unit. So that again got political when we deployed, because sadly, a lot of our some of our soldiers were minority members,
Hmm.
of color, of
Hmm.
ethnicities, and they were relegated to lower positions in the
Ah.
battalion. Also, the unit that we got assigned to fill in was a unit from Tennessee, and there were, in many ways, racial bias and bias against us as New Yorkers, which put a lot of my soldiers in
Hmm.
jeopardy, as far as they've earned their rank, and now they're being subordinated by somebody else because they're not in that clique.
Hmm.
So that was a problem from the beginning. With my case, I they I just finished writing about this. When they broke up the teams, we were all anxious to get into the country, right? And there were people like, well, "You're going to go, you're not going to go, you're going to wear civilian clothes, you're not going to wear." So there's a lot of, because it was all like popcorn. Every policies and guidance was, popping around. This general would have this opinion, this general
Yeah,
had it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then when they finally distributed the teams to go downrange, I got on a team 9, that was run by a reserve major from Tennessee.
Hmm.
And when you talk about getting back to Army standards, this guy did not meet very many of them. He was a major, but he was overweight, had long hair, and he always wanted to give you an example, he wanted his weapon before everybody else. So he walked into the arms room, and you're not supposed to do that. So the colonel actually, after 3 times, the colonel had to come in and say, "Don't go in the arms room." Well, this guy ended up putting his foot in there and says, "I'm in, I'm in." And that was the kind of they
How
put
childish. How
yes.
childish,
But
right.
this was not only
Yeah.
with the weapon, I wanted an extra powerful weapon. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're going to combat. Don't you remember Somalia? Does Black Hawk Down
Yeah.
mean anything to you? He's like, we're not going to need those kind of weapons. And I'm like, sir, this is combat.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's another story. But it turned out that over the course of the year, there were many incidents whereby egos got in the way and missions did not get accomplished and soldiers got injured or
Uh-huh.
marginalized. Uh, and I as a at the time a 24-year veteran, um, and having a fairly um, high moral compass and big mouth, I spoke up about it. I remember telling my colonel
Yeah.
one time, I was like, sir, with all due respect, it's kind of
Mhm.
like my mantra, but um, don't mess with my soldiers. Then they're all
Yeah.
my soldiers.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, leadership, leadership, I think, hinges on respect. And yeah, I can say, I got a little bit of what you were talking about. That's why I was chuckling a little bit when I was transferred to North Carolina with Chrysler in 1986.
mhm.
And I said to somebody, it's very small story. He says, "Well," he said, Where'd you go to school?" I said, "I went to school at St. Bonaventure." And the fellow was like, "That's a Catholic school, isn't it?" It's like, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore. These people have some very strong opinions, and
Mhm.
I think when what you're talking about is that you have uh, a a group of guys, gals, whatever, and it's
Mhm.
not homogenous. I mean, they come from all different cultures and colors and religions and whatever, and you got to get them to follow your lead,
Mhm.
uh, hopefully willingly, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
isn't that really the key? Is that they trust you and they value your opinion, and that's why they do it, and that's why, personally speaking, I think that's why the ethos now that it's very difficult for a combat fella to report to a guy in a dress.
Right.
Yeah, that's you're losing that guy. You're losing
Mhm.
that guy. Whether it's right or wrong, you can debate that, but you are losing that guy. There's no question about it.
Right. Yeah. Then I believe in the warrior ethos. I
Hmm.
really truly believe in it. I mean, the bottom line is we have to know how to kill people, break things, and then get our boys and girls home safe if we can. I believe we have lost a lot with regard to that warrior ethos.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that my job in civil affairs was a blend of so many things. I mean, not only did we have the capability of, calling in air support, calling for artillery,
Hmm.
and fighting. We had higher physical standards than the regular army, and mental standards.
Hmm.
But I felt that it was the perfect job for someone like myself,
Hmm.
with my background, with my humanitarian side, and my empathy for human beings.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your story because uh, you had some difficulties yourself.
I did.
And then let's talk about those to educate our listeners. And then the story of marrying your wife, who is a fellow vet, and I mean,
Hmm.
this is a wonderful human story. And that's why I think your book is going to do so well because it's going to operate on two different levels. It's going to operate on a technical level and also emotional level. I have a good friend of mine who wrote a book about the Holocaust, and he was
Hmm.
his parents, both parents were Holocaust survivors, and The guy's name is Jerry Elman, and the book is Miracles Through Hell. And if anybody wants to go to my website, you can hear the interview of that, and plus the YouTube we made out of that with the background, but written with the precision of an engineer, which he was when he worked for Kodak, but also the humanity of the story behind what his family went through. And I see the same thing with you with your story. I see that that's why I'm so enthused about talking to you. I see this thing of a fellow who has these leadership skills, these technical qualities, these having been in the room, but also how that's affected you and how you've overcome that, and the story of you and your wife. So let's get into that a little bit, okay? Not a little bit.
Sure.
Let's get into that a lot. All right.
Well, let's do Heather first. Heather, she was a specialist, a E4 enlisted person, and our cook in the when we deployed. And
She was your cook.
not my cook, but she was a cook. She was the cook
Okay.
in the reserve unit here,
Okay.
and a lower ranking enlisted
All
person.
right. Yeah.
And I, as a captain, I really didn't have much to do with her, right? And I was married
Oh
at the
yeah.
time and everything, and it was just, But then, I saw her once at a restaurant in Afghanistan. I mean, she was having a bad day. I was having a bad day, and it was just get a little crazy. And I said to a couple of friends, "Hey, let's just go out to lunch." And so we put our pistols on and we went out to lunch, which was kind of stupid, but she was
Put on
there
your
too.
pistols. Put on your pistols and went out to lunch.
So
Yeah.
she, so she was there too, and the guy, she
Yeah.
apparently was having a bad day too, and so I saw her there, and then I knew her when we redeployed and everything, but I was never stationed with her.
Hmm.
And had I realized how much she was harassed while she was over there, I definitely would have
Ah.
jumped on a grenade for her. But anyways, we went to a reunion about 3.5 years ago. As our reunion, our unit has reunions every so often.
Hmm.
Some of us even once a month if we can meet it. But anyways, it was a formal reunion, and Heather was there. I was single, she was single, and so a few months later, she had a garage sale at her house, and she lived an hour away. So I was like, I'm gonna go to that garage sale. And next thing you know, it was on September 11th, actually, 3 years ago. I just wanted to take her out, so we drove to Utica for a Norman Rockwell exhibit. And then I'm like, I'm an artist, and she knew about Norman Rockwell, and I'm like, she's perfect for me. And so we started dating, and then 2 years ago, well, 1 year and let's see, 1 year, 2 months, and 16 days ago, we got married. And she's just perfect for me, and you know, she gets me, and
Yeah.
she's
Isn't
got
that it? Yeah.
war trauma. She's got a beautiful heart. She's a very strong Christian, beautiful family, and I hit the lottery, and
Well,
couldn't be more happy.
now, am I wrong? You had an emotional support dog, right?
I did. Yeah, I had a service dog.
Okay, so let me frame this. Why this is
Oh
an
no.
extraordinary story. You had an emotional support dog,
Hmm.
and you your relationship with your wife, which had to be God sent,
Yes,
uh,
indeed.
uh, got you to the point where you got the emotional support from another human being,
Hmm.
not an animal, which an animal can love you only so much, but another human being that you could relate to, who had a similar story, similar backgrounds, and you found like why God put you through all this, because now you're here, right? I mean, isn't
Hmm.
that pretty much what it is?
You know, that's very well said. So Reagan was a service dog, though, instead of a ES, emotional support animal. She was woke me
Okay.
up when I had nightmares, and I had nightmares for decades, and they've dissipated over these last maybe 6 months. The service dog I had, she got attacked by another dog, and
Uh,
she got bit in the throat, and her
ooh.
personality changed.
Yeah.
And and then when Heather had a dog too, so we had both dogs together, and it would trigger our PTSD when we were sitting watching TV
Ah.
or talking, and they would start barking because we live in the woods, and animals would go by, birds, and they start barking, and it trigger us.
Hmm.
So I had a friend a very, very good friend who just asked me to be best man at his wedding, named Joe. And he was struggling and he loved Reagan, my dog. And so I gave Reagan to him.
Hmm.
And now they are like peanut butter and jelly. They're very good. And Heather just, she helps me, just made me, recovered me in a way that I
Yeah.
think, between her and God, I'm
Yeah.
here.
I have this philosophy of life. I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little sentimental, but everything that happened in my life that was crappy, I thought was crappy, has gotten me where I am now. So, I never ask God for a destination. I ask him for a direction. It's sort of like I had no idea had no idea I was going to meet Nita. I met Nita by writing an ad, by the way. I'll tell you that story one day. At my daughter's wedding, I said, "Listen, if I didn't know how to write an ad, you wouldn't be here." So my daughters every once in a while would complain about one of my car ads. I said, "No, don't do that. You wouldn't exist." But who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew
Who
that?
knew?
Yeah, who knew that a failed engagement one time would lead me to writing this ad, would lead her to answering it to blah 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 blah, and then you're here and you're like, wow, that's really kind of cool. So I think sort of we have that same thing in common, although
Mhm.
obviously your challenges were much more serious than mine, but that sort of thing where you get it or you don't get it,
Mhm.
and then taking a date to Utica. I mean, that's always a clincher right there. I mean, how could she resist
She
after
said yes.
I'm telling you, Utica? My Lord, that is you suave, you suave sob, really. So tell me now. Now the thing is, the other hint that I have here, or I think I know about you, is that you being an artist. Now you got some accolades from George. What's this guy's name? Bush. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's explain that because that's something that is very interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I'll start when I've had some trauma in the past and I was didn't know how to handle it, so I started drinking. Um, this is going back, the mid 80s, and I bought a 5 foot by 4 foot canvas and I started painting and it came out pretty good. And I'm like, how the heck? Because I'm colorblind, and don't ask me how I got into airborne school and infantry, but I did. Um, so I developed a skill for painting, kind of Grandma Moses. She was my hero.
Hmm.
And so then in Afghanistan, fast forward, I didn't expect to be painting, but I happened to stumble upon being the first person to teach formal English in Afghanistan in 23 years. And my base commander, who I worked directly for, he supported that. He said, as long as I can teach too. So we started teaching, and a lot of the teachers that taught at the Bagram school, where it was nearby our base, were executed or fled to Pakistan. So the
Oh, gee.
principal of the school, when I talked to him, not about teaching, but about relationships, trying to get him on our side and see what we could do for him to make his people support us. He was so frustrated. He's got his hand on his head and he's looking at his handwritten chart, a matrix of how many kids are going to go with this teacher, how many kids are going with that teacher, and he was including girls in the school, and I'm like, holy moly, because that was so forbidden under the Taliban.
Hmm.
So I talked to my boss and we started teaching school. I was the only certified teacher, so I ended up teaching English. And word of that got out, and the Army Times came in, which is our huge publication in the military, and they recorded one of our classes.
Hmm.
And it was funny because just to give you a background of how much need there is, or probably is now again, I asked my students, I could speak just a little bit of Dari, and I'm like, my name is Steve. I'm a teacher from New York. Who knows where New York is? And these kids are between 17 and 29 years old,
Hmm.
and men with families. And maybe about 30 men in the classroom, and two of them raised their hand. And I said, who knows where the United States is? Two raised their hand. who knows where New York is, another two. And just on and on. I said to my translator, I said, Jawad, maybe tomorrow we ought to bring in a map. He says, oh, no, sir. We better bring in a globe because they'll think the world is flat. So one of my
Ah,
chapters is called The World is Flat. And I sent you a picture of, I searched the whole next couple days to find a globe in Kabul, which was almost impossible. And I found like a 3-inch globe, and the kids were mesmerized by it to see where they were located versus where I was from. And it was just overwhelmingly a great opportunity to educate, to teach, to nourish. Um, and so we did that for 5 weeks. I ended up the need was overwhelming, so I ended up recruiting up to 17 other soldiers that wanted to teach, and I would check lesson plans and give them encouragement on what to teach,
mhm.
what not to teach. You don't teach about religion or history really. Um, so they all didn't get an opportunity because the program was canceled after 5 weeks.
Well, is it? I mean, the thing about this is that um, let me see if I can frame this question properly. Uh, no matter how admirable the the um the mission is to do that, hearts and minds, educating,
Yes, sir.
whatever. I mean, isn't it really a case where you don't have enough resources to really affect a change? I mean, you don't have enough medicine to fix that disease. I mean,
Right.
as many you can save some kids and here or there, whatever. But as far as changing the culture in a country that doesn't where they don't even know that the world is round, I mean, it seems like it's so formidable a task that why even take it up at all? But I mean,
Huh.
that's I guess that's the question. And then from what you were saying that your the tactics were that you believed in were to ingrain yourself into the culture and the look of the people that were there, and then the command tells you no, you need to look like American soldiers, and they have, I mean, they must look like, I mean, you must look like people from outer space to them when you put on a uniform and you shave your beard. So, I
Exactly.
mean, can you comment on any of this because I really don't know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, you framed it very well for me. When we first went over, we were told by a one-star general named Kern that we're not even going to need uniforms because we'll be in civilian clothes and drive civilian vehicles. Uh,
Hmm.
because our job was to kind of integrate with the people. And as special operations folks, you got your Green Berets, your Delta Force, your SEALs. Everybody's got beards, and they're safer if they're,
Ah,
from a distance. Safety is key. I mean, I could drive past a Taliban stronghold, and if I'm in their vehicle dressed like them, they're not even going to pay attention. But if
mm-hmm,
I'm in a Humvee or a other military vehicle and I'm driving by and I got my uniform on, I'm a target.
mm-hmm,
So we were encouraged to dress civilian. And I look at it as the army grew, right? A big
yeah,
army came in. It was an unconventional war. It was a special operations war that went conventional fairly quickly. We still had the SEALs and the Green Berets and the Delta guys in country, and they're doing fantastic work. We wiped out the Taliban in months, but Al Qaeda was bigger and stronger, more powerful than Al Qaeda. But my job wasn't to necessarily engage physically with these. I mean, physically, yes, but not with weapons
right.
drawn. Um, Hearts and minds is what we had to do. But the school thing was only a fraction of what we did. Um, as I mentioned, that I had that bad major that was our team chief. We ended up getting rid of him,
Mm-hmm,
getting him on a different assignment because he was deemed as incompetent. And so I ended up taking the team, and I was the by the grace of God, honestly, the um the S5 or the civil affairs chief in Bagram Air Base, the largest base. But as more soldiers came in, it became less of a special operations war and more of a conventional war. So, hey, we're cutting our hair, we're shaving our beards, and we're wearing uniforms, which, in my opinion, was like the first nail in the coffin for our disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and getting back to the painting, so we taught school for 5 weeks, right? And during that time, I had to go back to my uniform, and which the kids are like looking at us like, you can speak our language, a little bit, and you looked
Mm-hmm.
like us, and we respected you. Like if you have a beard over there, you're seen as more wise than your general without a beard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or they'll address questions to me instead of the general usually. So when I got rid of the teaching job, I was fired from that, and then I was transferred because I'm kind of a renegade, and I know it just seemed like I knew what was right.
Mm-hmm.
I could see the ice melting,
Yeah, yeah.
the effort in Afghanistan melting into something that was not really practical to winning the war. So I got transferred to Kabul, and I was in a safe house, and I had a little more time on my hands. Because my other job was, 16 to 20 hours a day, which was amazing. But the new job, I said, well, that teaching at the school was the most significant thing I could have ever done in my lifetime. Because like you with selling a vehicle, right? You got to sell the first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gives you the confidence, it gives you the ability, it gives you it sets your future up or sets up these,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and
Yeah, you
so
create a culture. If what you and I, like I said, is much more much more non-critical than what you did, but you set up a culture, and the culture will beget more culture. So
exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about collect. I used to call it collecting customers. You're
Mhm.
collecting hearts, which would,
Yes, sir.
once you get somebody, then somebody that knows them, somebody knows them, somebody knows them. Okay, you have a culture, so I know exactly conceptually what you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I could see nothing but this because
Mm-hmm.
it was I saw it as it could spread. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily
Absolutely.
by US soldiers, but by non-governmental organizations, but just start
Mm-hmm.
educating.
Gotcha.
Because for 23 years they had no education other than up to eighth grade in madrasas and
So the question I have about this Afghanistan thing is it seems to me like I mean, okay, we had a real big success with Japan and a real big success with South Korea.
Mhm.
Okay, so we try to do this with a culture that is probably as difficult, if not more, than those countries. And why couldn't we do it? I mean, why couldn't we? I mean, take a look at South Korea for instance, or Japan. I mean, okay, they have an industrial base. They have an educational system. I get that, so that's a plus. Okay, but also, you can't write in their language because they have a completely different alphabet or whatever it is, and they have a history of hating Westerners. Okay, and why could we do it with them and we can't do it with a country as small as Afghanistan? Was it a religion? I mean, what? I mean, what was why couldn't we do it?
Afghanistan is I mean historically it's Seth Jones writes The Graveyard of Empires.
Oh, yeah.
And it's probably one of the best books I've ever read with regard to the history
Mm-hmm.
and our initial engagement into Afghanistan. And he just articulates not only the chain of command problems, but the history, the tribal history of
Mm.
Afghanistan. I mean, from Alexander the Great to the British to, I mean, great powers, to the Russians. Um, failure, failure, failure. And why did we think it could be different?
Yeah,
I don't,
that's the question.
yeah. And I don't believe that we thought it could be different. We thought we could get the bad guys and then give them their country back. But there's a lot of need there. There was so much need. I think
Yeah.
more than Japan or South Korea. because it's the terrain one is extremely inhospitable. There's bad guys everywhere.
And you don't know who they are, right?
Exactly right. They dress like you, they talk like you, but they could be wearing a suicide vest. That's one thing. And but it's just the between the tribes, I think, is we had no real concept of the tribes, the tribal hostilities, interactions.
Mhm.
I mean, they go back for centuries, these ethnic tensions. And it's we could not control that. I think that was one of the ingredients in the disaster was that. And one thing we did as civil affairs people or as special operations folks, we read a lot about Afghanistan before we
Mhm.
deployed. And while we were there, we continued to read and update ourselves on the peculiarities of personalities that we dealt with and the different tribes and cultures, how to deal with women, blah blah blah.
Well, some of it is, I was reading an article years ago about the difference between Truman and Johnson. And they said that Johnson was a tough guy, but he was tender-minded. He didn't understand a clear and untrammeled view of what reality was, like Harry Truman did. Harry Truman stood up to Stalin, the Marshall Plan, made
Yeah.
the decision to bomb the atomic bomb Japan. And it said he came from a clear and untrammeled view of what reality is and what you need to do to address that reality. And
Hmm.
the thing is, I think there was a lot of wishful thinking there. Personal opinion. There's a lot of wishful thinking that they can affect this change, and they really can't affect that change. And
Hmm.
certainly, I think everybody to a person is appalled at the withdrawal at Afghanistan. What a cluster. What a
Yeah, let's see.
what a cluster that was. And then you have this fella just this week who is allegedly vetted by the CIA and and shot those two unfortunate service people in Washington. I mean, like
Mhm.
it's just it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling, especially the withdrawal. The withdrawal is mind-boggling. Like you couldn't see that coming.
No, right,
You
right.
can, and I guess you can comment on this. A lot of veterans are telling me they should have just kept Bagram. They should have kept 3,000 soldiers at Bagram, and that would have solved the problem. Maybe that's an oversimplification, but what do you think?
I don't think it would have solved the problem, but it certainly would have helped. I mean, I remember right after it happened, I was in I was in Sicily. Actually, let me backtrack a little bit. Um, in my journal, and this is we're talking about, February, March, April, May of 2002, right after 9/11, I was writing in my journal that this is not going to work out well. Um, because what I could see from my little tiny perch as a captain, and then over the next 20 years, I could see it, exponentially exploding, was generals, politicians would want to make their mark,
Mm,
get their medals, get their credentials to like when we deployed. I told you my unit was opconned or to another civil affairs unit. But another guy wanted to get on his report, he wanted to have said that he sent guys into combat. So he transferred ridiculously five, including myself, people to his unit and then send them back to the other civil affairs unit. Sounds stupid, but this happens all the time. And this way, this guy could get on his evaluation that he sent soldiers into combat, which means that he would get accolades, maybe a promotion from his boss. And Dom, I got to tell you, this happens so much about getting awards by making your mark on history, by
mhm.
to get that promotion to be instead of a 1 star, I want to be a 2 star or 3 star general. I could be famous. This could make me famous, and or get like another example was in our unit, bronze stars, right? They were
Uh,
like candy going
yeah,
out to
yeah, yeah.
mostly officers from that unit, and my unit got two, and out of 40, and then I got recommended for two. One got lost and one got downgraded. So I have no complaints
I
about that.
I I I totally understand where
I
you
earned that though.
but I totally understand what you're talking about, and every once in a while I get a chance to teach a course be a guest speaker at RIT. I talk about that is the fallacy of a bureaucracy. It is a bureaucracy.
Yes,
So
sir.
how do you survive a bureaucracy? Well, you survive a bureaucracy by following the rules and following your boss. Okay.
Right, right,
So if your boss, and I use this example all the time, if your boss is at Kodak and he says, our business is pictures on pieces of paper, and you raise your hand and go, no, I think maybe it should be digital. You are not a team player, this
right.
and here, and then we're starting an office, and 20% of the people can get 5 stars, and 30% can,
Yeah,
it's got to hit the curve, and that is the hallmark of a bureaucracy.
you're
And
right.
and
You're
that's
right.
the problem. That's the problem with the Pentagon and all these big organizations is that it stifles innovation, it stifles common sense sometimes, right? I
I
mean,
couldn't agree with you more, man.
read Catch 22. I mean, don't look at the movie. Read Catch
Hmm.
22. I mean, he's got it. He's Joseph Hell has got it nailed. He's
Hmm.
absolutely nailed. But
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
but that is the hallmark of a bureaucracy. A bureaucracy will punish failed innovation more than it will reward success.
Yeah, and it crushes the well, my one of my
Yeah.
captains said, the the bureaucracy crushes the will of the warrior in my
Yes.
case, right?
Yes.
And because you got to get along to be promoted or whatever. But I think that
Yeah.
I've been promoted several times in my career, but I never expected to be major. Holy moly.
Hmm.
After I got in a lot of trouble with the military, I still got promoted. So it was
Well,
uh
you were that good. You were that.
well, I don't know if I was that good, but
Yeah.
it's just
Well, we're just about to run out of time, but there's
okay, let's go.
a couple of questions I got
Yes,
to ask.
sir.
Okay. First of all, anybody who sees this on YouTube sees this tremendously large shell behind your head. Okay. What is that thing?
The this one here,
Yeah. Yeah, what is
I
I mean
think it's like a
that's not in your six shooter, you know what I mean?
no.
I mean,
I got that at
what
Army
is
Navy store. I think it's like a 120 millimeter rocket. But the interesting one is right over. Let's see if I can
okay.
look to it here.
Okay. And what are
This
those?
one
Yeah.
is from Verdun, World War One,
Oh, wow.
and soldiers used to engrave where it's from or
Oh,
different
yeah.
things. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I just in
Well,
this
what
Civil War
collector of
saber
military
up there. It
history?
just yeah, I love this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And
And
if you were
and
to see, go ahead.
and the other thing,
Oh,
before I let you lose
exit.
last couple of comments, I mean, the people that are listening to this show, I mean, there's a lot of vets, there's a lot of people that are older, maybe have children who are interesting in careers and whatever. Give a little shout out for people that are considering or their kids are considering going into the military. I mean, a lot of people have like a bias against that. They have a bias against their kids going into the trades, but it's really great places to set yourself in a direction, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. We have a grandson we've been trying to encourage, but he's got a couple other issues. He won't qualify right now. But my wife and I, we actually considered wrapping our camper with recruiting stuff because we believe um, that it should, I'd like to say mandatory for 2 years of service, whatever you
Mm,
do, either, in your community or whatever after high school, before college. But military service, it made me realize my potential as far as contributing to the world. It taught me a skill, carpentry. It taught me
hmm.
public relations. It taught me how to blow stuff up. Well, you don't want to use that very much, but it
I
taught
don't
me
use that. I don't use that very much. There's a leading question for you. We don't have time for. Okay, go ahead.
uh,
Yeah,
oh wait,
very
I learned
much.
medical skills.
Yeah,
And I made the greatest friends I've ever
yeah,
made in
yeah,
my
yeah,
life.
yeah,
People, when you meet people who are willing to die with you or for you,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
yeah.
And the camaraderie, I think, moreover than any other profession, military service is just a family that is forever.
Yeah.
And so I would strongly encourage any young man or woman. considering.
So, what's the working title of your book? You have a working title?
It's called The Window of Opportunity.
Window of Opportunity,
Mhm.
and you're just about finished with that, right?
My problem is
That sigh, that
I
that that sigh and eye rolling you just did is very
honestly, I've been writing it for 20
yeah
years, right? I got a
yeah
master's
yeah
in education, right?
yeah
But I get so overwhelmed and I ended up writing the same story two, three, four times and mixing it in. And so I'm in the process now of trying to edit things but I believe not only is that the title of my book, but it's the title of that painting I did for President Bush,
yeah.
because I felt that we did have an opportunity in Afghanistan. And I feel that that is a very appropriate title for this memoir.
Well, that's good. Unfortunately, I think you hear in the background, my cat, Miss Hazel, got
Mhm.
got loose, and she wants something, and she starts singing the opera. So,
Oh,
and it's
great.
not too bad now because it's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock during the day, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, it gets a little bit of a problem. So, with that, we're out of time anyway. I'd love to have you and your bride. What is her name?
Heather,
Heather. I would like to have you and Heather over for dinner one of these days. I mean, you're
perfect.
you're local, and
I
I
look
assume
forward
you
to
like to eat. And she used to be a cook, so we can
it.
we can make her one of her favorites. But uh, thank you ever so much, and we will be talking to you soon. And God bless you for what you do.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Say hi to Nita for me too, okay?
I sure will.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Well, we're back here with another interview with a very interesting guest I had a while back. His name is Steve McAlpin, uh, retired major in the Army, a lot of experience in overseas, especially Afghanistan. And the topic that we didn't cover during the interview that is very important to him, and I'll give it to you in one word, and he has a lot to say about it, and that is the word trauma. So, Steve. Let me let you loose with this one, and you give me what your thoughts are.
Thank you so much for the question, Dom, and the opportunity to talk about this very, very important topic. I never thought, being educated and having a great upbringing and things like that, that I would be subject to post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hmm.
But it honestly, it almost took my life at least five or six times. Um, and you know that I had a service dog to help me with some of the nightmares that I've had.
Hmm.
Um, Not necessarily about, you know, guns and bombs and stuff like that, but different events that are military related. The effects of it came on fairly suddenly. I got home I taught special ed at a school in Rush, part of BOCES, and I came home one day and I just was had a bad day. I was living in Victor and I laid on my love seat, which is right by the door that leads into the garage. And my wife at the time came home. I was on the couch crying. I mean, just sobbing, all curled up. And she came in and she walked right by me. I said, hey, I'm having a really bad day right now. And she just kept walking and saying, let me know if you need anything. She went to go in to
Mm.
watch a soap opera. And I was like, so I got in the car, I was driving a truck, and I went down the driveway. I said, I got to get some help. So I drove to the VA. It was after 5. I drove to the VA on Westfall Road, and it was closed. Drove to the Veterans Outreach Center. It was closed. Drove to the Veteran Service Agency. That was closed. And I'm bawling. And as I mentioned earlier, the song "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning" was on the radio, and I could not control myself from sobbing the whole time I was driving. I ended up being in Henrietta and driving the wrong way. I decided to go to Canandaigua to that hospital because I knew it didn't close as far as I knew. So I drove out there, but I was going the wrong way on 390. I was driving opposite the
Oh,
traffic, and you can just see I was, crying, and cars are beeping at me. I'm like, holy crap. So I ended up turning myself around without incident and got to the Canandaigua VA. They got some big wooden doors there, right, the main entrance, and I walked in. It happened to be unlocked, and The only person that was inside was a maintenance woman. And I was crying. I said, I just need a bed for tonight. I just need a bed for tonight. And she didn't know what to do. So we finally got a nurse, and there's no room at the inn here at the because they do have beds there, but apparently it was not available. So the police were called, and they took me over to Thompson Hospital, where I ended up spending the night there, sedated and just um, getting out of that funk that I was in. So, and that was really an eye-opening moment for me. So as I mentioned, I'm fairly outspoken, and I can see injustice where it lays, oftentimes. So a week later, I made an appointment with the director of the Canandaigua VA Medical Hospital Center there, and I said, "Listen, you almost had a dead veteran on your doorstep last
Mm,
week, and that was me. There was no place for me to sleep. There was nobody here to counsel me. I mean, I'm a veteran, combat
hmm
veteran. I had no place to go other than a civilian hospital. And I thought that was outlandish. I said, you need to develop a program where people can call or something
hmm
to they can reach out for help and get the help that they need, especially for vulnerable veterans like myself. And I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but the the new crisis line that we have at the VA, or the crisis line nationally, it's in Canandaigua. That's the headquarters of it. And I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but 2 years later, they had the 800 number that you can call for suicide prevention. And I don't know if I was instrumental in that at all. I don't really care, but at least it's out there now.
hmm
Um, and I've called it. The I moved down to Virginia later, and I was just overwhelmed with pain, anxiety, frustration, grief. And I checked myself into the hospital a couple times because I didn't think I could make it. Um,
hmm
one of the stories in my book is about what a 9 millimeter Beretta tastes like. Um,
mm
and I see it just like it was yesterday. And I described, you pull the trigger and your teeth are gonna bust out, all that. I described everything that I could possibly think of. Um, and I wrote it. It's in my book.
hmm
Then another time I was at a family event, and nobody was talking to me. And I'm like, I'm worthless. And I drove to Lake Ontario, took my shoes off and started swimming across the lake.
hmm
And I got out probably about three-quarters of a mile or so, and I turned back. I'm like, this is pretty stupid. Um, so my appeal, and I'm so grateful for this question, sorry, but it's so important that veterans get help,
hmm
especially combat veterans, and anybody that's struggling with ending their own life or with relationships or whatever, to reach out to someone because we're out here.
Right.
I'm always here for my vets, anybody that's in crisis. Especially my vets, and they're all my vets. Like I mentioned, I don't care if you're a general or you're a private. You served with me or not, I don't care. You're a little piece of gold in my book, and I will be here to help. And I think God granted me through several, I don't want to call them attempts, but maybe attempts, but at ending my own life, I think that God has saved me to put the words in my mouth to create a message that I could convey to other people that are struggling.
Well, I think that I hear this common thread from talking to a lot of vets is that they're not looking for sympathy. They're looking for empathy. They're
Mhm.
looking for somebody to understand that the way they feel. And there's very few of us that can really understand other than another vet, I think. I think that's probably um, the, the most effective thing that can happen is one vet talk to another vet.
Mhm.
There's got to be ways of doing that now, right? We weren't years ago. I mean, think about it when the veterans came back from Vietnam in particular.
Mhm.
You know, they're vilified, they're yelled at. I mean, I mean, think about these guys too. Is that these guys were drafted? It wasn't their choice to go into Vietnam and do what they had to do in the jungles, but they did it
Right.
anyway. And then they get vilified when they came back, and there was no support for them. But there seems to be a little bit more support now. But is there a particular way of people getting a hold of you or an organization when they feel it when they feel this way, Steve?
They could reach out to me on email or on this is where I see my life going. If I could save one or if I could help one to,
Mm,
and I honestly, I have helped some people to realize their value and, their contributions. And, we're all creatures of God and we all have a
mhm.
great value. So please reach out, majormac2002 at gmail.com anytime. I'm not on Twitter or any of that stuff, but,
This is the worthwhile stuff.
you
This is the
mentioned,
worthwhile, Go ahead.
I just wanted to say this, shout out maybe or acknowledgement of those Vietnam
Yeah.
those Vietnam vets. Whenever I meet one, they got their hat on or whatever, a
Mhm.
jacket or a symbol on their car or a sticker. I always go up and thank them because they blazed the trail for my generation and every generation after us to get those key supports.
Right.
To not to say that I'm okay, that I'm having a problem. They went
Right.
through so much unbelievable stuff that I'm just eternally grateful to them. And I will never, and I know my friends too, other vets will never, ever let another veteran be treated like that.
Yep. Yep. They came back. They were traumatized by going there, and they were traumatized when they came back, and
Hmm.
there was no support for them or understanding.
That's right.
I
Yep.
mean, no understanding of the trauma, which is the title of this little segment. So we'll make this as a YouTube. God bless you for feeling this way and putting yourself out like that. That's really great, Steve.
Well, thank you, Don, for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening. You can find our previous shows at nononsenseroundtable.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.